Hi everyone, I hope that you are all okay. Sorry for the bit long for getting this review to you, but it's because I've been attending the Cheltenham Literature Festival, which as you know, I go every year. I absolutely love it. And during the period of time at the Literature Festival, I didn't actually do any reading of Pride and Prejudice at all. I started the day after the festival ended. I'm going to talk about the Literature Festival in a separate video, so I'll be back and you can, watch me talk about that and the reason why I wasn't reading such during that time period. But anyway, the festival was 10 days, so I actually didn't start reading Pride and Prejudice until Monday of this week, and I finished it last night. And I have to say, this was absolutely fabulous week for me for reading. You may have seen my previous video with Sense and Sensibility where I had real trouble getting through it, but I was going through this reading slump. I just couldn't read. I had to really force myself to get through it. But I think it also didn't help the fact that with Sense and Sensibility, the way that it's structured, it's very description based. There is, dialogue and conversations, but not much. So when you're going through a slump, you really find it difficult to get round to reading, and when you do, it's just blocks and blocks of long paragraphs and everything. I was just a bit like, oh my god, but I'd forced myself through it. This time didn't need any forcing at all. And if you look at the structure of Pride and Prejudice, straight off the bat, you are thrown into a conversation between Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. And it's absolutely, it just slams you straight into the Bennet situation right away. You don't have long backstory like you did with Sense Sensibility. You get kind of backstory stuff as you read along, but it's not like Sense Sensibility at all. I better hold up the book actually, since I've got it here. And of course, it's her most well-known book. I absolutely love the story of Pride and Prejudice. I think it's great, and it's really funny. At the Literature Festival, I actually attended an event which I got to ask a question from and everything, called Heathcliff versus Darcy, who's the biggest shit? And it was voted that Heathcliff was the biggest shit, but it was really great that Dolly and Sebastian, the two, Sebastian Volks is Sebastian, and Dolly, I think, oh god, is it Peterson or Patterson or so? She's a blogger and stuff, and a journalist and that, and they were on the side that Darcy was the worst, and it was really interesting hearing their arguments about why Darcy is so bad. And I couldn't help but think of that when I was reading this, and it made it all the more interesting because I was really picking up on his bad qualities and such, which shines through this book. That was discussed then. It was a really, really great event, but it was really funny, going through. Going to that event and then start rereading Pride and Prejudice. If you don't know the story, Pride and Prejudice follows the Bennet sisters. So they are a set of 5 sisters who live with their parents, and they're not well off at all. They're very happy in their life and everything, but their mother is hell-bent on kind of getting them married to rich men, and when suddenly a rich man arrives in the county, she gets very excited, Mr. Bingley, who's taken up residence not too far away, and he turns up at a dance in the area, and he's absolutely taken with the eldest Bennet daughter, Jane. But there is another man who comes with him, his good friend Mr. Darcy, whose wealth is twice the size of Bingley's, but he's quite rude and arrogant, and he slanders Lizzie. he mentions how her beauty is not fine enough to tempt me and stuff like this, and it's all about his relationship with second eldest daughter, Elizabeth, or Lizzie, as she's referred to in her family. And yeah, their relationship and stuff that happens between them and various other family members. And just as with Jane Austen's work, there's so many connections with various families and complications and stuff like that. So it was all about them and their relationship. I love Lizzie. I really love Lizzie, and going back to this world was really wonderful because I love her feistiness. I love her strength. I love her vulnerability as well, especially with what happens with Lydia later on in the book, and how that affects her. And her relationship, especially with her dad, she's very, very close to her dad, and how they play off against each other throughout the course of the book. It's wonderful to read. I love those kind of tender relationships between parents and children in literature. It's really beautiful to read, and especially a classic piece like Pride and Prejudice, because even though, like, say, compared to, like, say, Sense and Sensibility or something, yes, the girls are very close to their mother. Eleanor and Marianne and Margaret are very close to their mother. I always felt that reading Pride and Prejudice, that Lizzie's love for her father, you feel it. You can really feel the warmth between the two characters in this book. And yeah, so going back to that is absolutely wonderful to come across and everything. And I especially enjoyed meeting Mr. Collins again. I mean, it's been a good decade since I last read Pride and Prejudice, I can think, and to meet this guy who's a bit of a bumbly fool, but he means well. He's got heart, and everything, but it's just that his heart is not welcome in some points of the story, and he does make an idiot of himself at points in front of, like, Mr. Darcy and such. But he's a genuinely lovely character. I love him for that, and other characters like Charlotte and such. The way that it's structured is really lovely, and going straight into it, you're slammed into a conversation. But, like, how I said how in Sense and Sensibility you have this thing like there's a chapter, it's only 2 pages long, in which Marianne sees that Colonel Brandon's coming to the house and she doesn't want to see him, so she goes out for a walk with Margaret, and it's raining and she hurts herself, and Willoughby comes along, helps her, gets her home and all that lot, and then he leaves. All that happens with no dialogue in 2 pages, whereas I'm going to read you a couple of pages, which is 1 chapter in Pride and Prejudice, just to give you an idea of the difference. So this is Chapter 5. So, within a short walk of Longbourn lived a family with whom the Bennets were particularly intimate. Sir William Lucas had been formerly in trade in Meryton. Meryton is near the area where it's based. I should have said that at the beginning, but I forgot. In trade in Meryton, where he had made a tolerable fortune and risen to the honour of knighthood, being by an address to the king during his majority. The distinction has perhaps been felt too strongly. It had given him a disgust to this business and to his residence in a small market town, and quitting them both, he had removed with his family to a house about a mile from Meryton, denominated from that period Lucas Lodge, where he could think with pleasure of his own importance, and unshackled by business, occupy himself solely in being civil to all the world, for though elated by his rank, it did not render him supercilious. On the contrary, he was all attention to everybody. By nature inoffensive, friendly, and obliging, his presentation at St. James's had made him courteous. Lady Lucas was a very good kind of woman, not too clever to be a vulnerable neighbour to Mrs. Bennet. They had several children, the eldest of them, a sensible, intelligent young woman, about 27, was Elizabeth's intimate friend. So that first couple of paragraphs, sorry, this is slipping and it's annoying me. You kind of need that in order to explain who Charlotte's family are. But now is where she changes up the structure. That the Miss Lucases and the Miss Bennet should meet to talk over a ball was absolutely necessary, and the morning after the assembly brought the former to Longbourn to hear and communicate. "You began the evening well, Charlotte," said Mrs. Bennet with civil self-command to Miss Lucas. "You were Mr. Bingley's first choice." "Yes, but he seemed to like his second better." His second was Jane. "Oh, you mean Jane, I suppose, because he danced with her twice. To be sure, that did seem that if he admired her. Indeed, I rather believe he did. I heard something about it, but I hardly know what. Something about Mr. Robinson." "Perhaps you mean that I overheard between him and Mr. Robinson. Did not I mention it to you? Mr. Robinson's asking him how he liked our Meryton assemblies, and whether he did not think there was a great many pretty women in the room, and which he thought was the prettiest. He is answering immediately to the last question. Oh, the eldest Miss Bennet, beyond a doubt. There cannot be two opinions on the point." "Upon my word! Well, that was very decided indeed. That does seem as if... But, however, it may all come to nothing, you know." "My overhearing was more to the purpose than yours, Eliza," said Charlotte. "Mr. Darcy is not so well worth listening to as his friends is he? Poor Eliza, to be only just tolerable. I beg you would not put it into Lizzie's head to be vexed by his ill-treatment, for he is such a disagreeable man that it would be quite a misfortune to be liked by him. Mrs. Long told me last night that he sat close to her for half an hour without once opening his lips." "Are you quite sure, ma'am? Is not there a little mistake?" said Jane. "I certainly saw Mr. Darcy speaking to her." "Aye, because she asked him at last how he liked Netherfield, and he could not help answering her, but she said he seemed very angry at being spoke to." "Miss Bingley told me," said Jane, "that he never speaks so much unless amongst his intimate acquaintance. With them he is remarkably agreeable." "I do not believe a word of it, my dear. If he had been so very agreeable, he would have talked to Mrs. Long. But I can guess how it was. Everybody says that he is ate up with pride, and I dare say that he had heard somehow that Mrs. Long does not keep her carriage, and has come to the ball in a hack chaise." "I do not mind him not talking to Mrs. Long," said Miss Lucas, "but I wish that he danced with Eliza." "Another time, Lizzie," said her mother, "I would not dance with him if I were you." "I believe, ma'am, I may safely promise you never to dance with him." "His pride," said Miss Lucas, "does not afford me so much as pride often does, because there is an excuse for it. One cannot wonder that so very a fine young man with family, fortune, everything in his favour, should think highly of himself. If I may so express it, he has a right to be proud." "That is very true," replied Elizabeth, "but I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine." "Pride," observed Mary, whose pinked herself up upon the solitary of her reflections, "is a very common failing, I believe. By all that I have ever read, I am convinced that it is very common indeed, that human nature is particularly prone to it, and that there are very few of us who do not cherish a feeling of self-complacency on the score of some quality or other, real or imaginary. Vanity and pride are different things, though the words are often used synonymously. A person may be proud without being vain. Pride relates more to our opinion of ourselves, vanity to what we have others think of us." "If I were as rich as Mr. Darcy," cried a young Lucas, who came in with his sisters, "I should not care how proud I was. I would keep a pack of foxhounds and drink a bottle of wine every day." "Then you would drink a great deal more than you ought," said Mrs. Bennet, "and if I were to see you at it, I should take away your bottle directly." The boy protested that she should not. She continued to declare that she would, and the argument ended only with the visit. So as you can see, she's having, rather than all of this, block and block and block of information, she's giving you the slight information you need at the top, and then she flows it very naturally into this conversation. You learn about who's in the room based on who's talking, and you had this invasion of the other people coming into the room. One of them is Charlotte's brother, and he makes a comment which Mrs. Bennet responds to. And I love that you feel the motion in the room, in the environment, in the world that you're in. And that's just an example of one chapter from Pride and Prejudice, which I really loved being immersed back in this world. Now, as I said, I went to this literature festival session about Darcy, and it didn't. I don't feel that Darcy is that bad, but then at the same time I totally agree with the arguments that Sebastian and Dolly made with it, because he is really cruel. It's very interesting that the first question that got asked, a woman asked, can we put Darcy's arrogance and the way that he is down to him being autistic or being on the spectrum, because this woman who was asked the question said, I always saw him as being like Sheldon Cooper in The Big Bang Theory, and I don't believe that in the slightest. And Sebastian very quickly kind of knocked it out with her about that, saying he says himself that he was spoiled as a child, that this is something that's been ingrained in him since he was a child, and you can't force a disability onto a fictional character to justify bad faults about them. And also that with her asking that question, it was like, well, you're kind of also saying that everyone who is autistic or on the spectrum and that is arrogant, and it was just a bit weird, that question. That I never felt really anything different to Darcy after that session with reading this book, but I picked up on things a lot more. But I still, like him. I still like him and Lizzie and the way the story goes and everything. I really felt when I picked it up on Monday evening after getting home from work, after first day back, and I had to be there till 5 o'clock. I was just a bit like, let's just do a bit of reading, and I picked it up and I immediately felt myself being immersed in that world, and it was a nice cleanser after a long day. So I'm really thankful that I reread it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would recommend it to people. It doesn't feel like sensibility at all. The structuring is so much better, and I just enjoyed it. I really liked it. Now, when it comes to adaptations, obviously, the best adaptation of Pride and Prejudice ever is the one from the 90s done by the BBC with Colin Firth. I absolutely love this. Love this. I've got the soundtrack to this as well. It's so well adapted, so well filmed. The acting is great. Everything is just fantastic. It's perfect. This is like, I tend to watch this like on a Sunday if I've just got the day free, or when I'm ill, something like that. Is a really, at Christmas, that kind of thing. I just absolutely love to be immersed in this drama. It's wonderful. There's also the one that I really like is the 2005 film version with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden. It's got a few things that I go a bit about, just some choices didn't quite work. But overall, as a film, I love it. The soundtrack is beautiful. The way that Joe Wright shoots it is beautiful. So I would recommend Pride and Prejudice. And of course, because there has been a recent drama made of the PD James, I was going to say PJ James, I was thinking, no, that's wrong, PD James book, Death Comes to Pemberley. I also recommend the drama for that. I've got it in a box set with the 95 Pride and Prejudice, so I've got 2 copies of it. But the Death Comes to Pemberley drama, the book is crap. The drama is excellent. Not often I say that, but it's true. So I would recommend also the drama Death Comes to Pemberley. Yeah, which is good gem. And if you want to listen to a radio play, there's also one that was done, I think it was a few years ago now, where, oh, who's in it, hang on, Amanda Root, Pippa Nixon, that's it. Pippa Nixon plays Elizabeth. I've seen her a few times, no, twice now, performing at the RSC. She's a fantastic actress. And Samantha Spiro, she plays her mum, Mrs. Bennett. Yeah, David Charlton, Lydia Wilson, Georgia Fuller, Cara Selly, Rosie White, Michelle Terry, Jamie Parker. God, it's a long list. It's 2014. I've got it in the set, the complete set that the BBC put together of their radio plays of Jane Austen. You can buy it individually as well, just so you know, because I've seen it many times individually in various bookshops and such. But yeah, there's a complete set, and I love this set. So yeah, I recommend the 2014 radio play version of Pride and Prejudice as well. So that's my thoughts. I can't think of anything else to say, so I'll end it there. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. You can leave a comment in the comments box below, or if you give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, tally up to you, I'll let you decide. And I will be back shortly to announce what the next book is, and I'm going to be reading, and I've got a couple of other videos that I'm planning to film this afternoon. So I will see you guys later. Bye.